You're watching The Lookout, a production of the Division of World Languages and Cultural Studies here at Minot State University. I'm your host, Samuel Stinson, and on the program today, we have Lizzy LeRud. Lizzy LeRud is an associate professor of English with Minot State University and is a recent addition here at MSU in the fall semester of 2022. Lizzy LeRud is a scholar of American literature, poetry, and writing studies. Her essays have appeared in Tulsa Studies in Women's Literature, 19th Century Prose, the Rutledge Companion to the Literature of the U.S. South, the Edinburgh Companion to the Prose Poem, and the Poetry Foundation website. Lizzy LeRud, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Samuel. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
So I'm going to start the questions today in that I'll note that I read that you're a digital pedagogy specialist. Could you talk about what this is, digital pedagogy, and what all is involved with this area of your work?
Yeah, certainly. So this is a specialization that I got to work on as a postdoctoral fellow at Georgia Tech, which is where I was right before I moved to Minot. So I completed additional training, and which involved a couple seminars and guided teaching instruction while I was at Georgia Tech and working across multiple departments there. Of course, Georgia Tech was a wonderful place to do this work as a place with a lot of strengths in digital technologies, and so especially with computerized technologies. And I think that's when I think about digital pedagogy, I think that's one of the things that I think about is how can we incorporate computerized tools into the ways we teach. So for me, as a writing and literature person, when I came to Georgia Tech and started working in these fields a little more specifically, I set myself a few goals. I knew that I wanted to be able to incorporate a few particular types of communicative modes into my writing classes and also into my the ways I was teaching literary analysis in literature courses. So I had a few particular modes in mind. And so let me back up a little bit. When we're talking about teaching writing, of course, we often think about pen and paper, or perhaps a word processor. And of course, those are modes of technology. So one of the things that I like to point out to students when I start working with more unusual digital tools is that we're always mediating our communication in various ways using technology, whether we think of it as technology or not. Sometimes the newer technologies strike us as less transparent than a pen or paper, or perhaps even a book or a word processor might be those mediums that are a little more familiar to us. So I wanted to be able to work with my students to talk about how we write for internet platforms, for one thing. I wanted to be able to work with them for how we might design a podcast like this one and use our writing and communication skills to prepare and execute this kind of process. So for writing classrooms, it's a really wonderful opportunity to be able to work with students to use their skills in a very applicable real world capacity. It's really easy for them to see that the skills we're working on in writing classrooms are things that we use all the time. The internet has made that more apparent than ever, I think. In literature classrooms, one of the things that's really exciting about digital tools is the ways that it expands the way we can read. So for one easy example, one thing that digital tools lets us do with literature is actually digitize a text and make it searchable, and we can analyze it in certain ways because the words become objects, and we can look for patterns, look for patterns in sentence structures or grammar or an author's vocabulary, say, just by being able to analyze the words as kind of units of measurements. In some of my classes, so as a poetry person, one of the places I got to work with my literature classes on using these kinds of tools was actually not with digitized texts, but with audio recordings and data files of poets' voices and of performances that had been done with particular poems. So using speech recognition software, we were able to take that kind of data and look at patterns in the ways that people speak and would perform certain poems, and that gives us a world of raw data, basically, then to look at. So I guess, the big takeaway here is that my students are using these tools to gather different kinds of information, of course, and to communicate different kinds of things. And while on the one hand, I just want them to be able to do that, to have that kind of digital literacy, on the other hand, what we're learning is always to think critically about the ways that we communicate and what's communicated to us, and the ways that that information is mediated by different kinds of technology, whether that's something that we totally take for granted these days, like a book, or whether that's something more complicated, like the way a computer screen will make words look and change the way that things are communicated to us.
It's interesting. And listen to your response. I'm reminded that the iPad, wasn't it, I think, 2010 when the iPad was put out on the market? Something like that. There's an old saying about how technology is really only that which has been around after we've been born. Everything that was there before we were born isn't really technology. It's just stuff we take for granted.
Yeah.
Let me ask also, so I remember seeing that you've done archival work also in your research. So could you talk about what all is involved with archival work and research? And is this also something that you bring into your classroom?
Yeah, sure. So before I was a postdoctoral scholar at Georgia Tech, I got to spend a year at Emory University. They have a wonderful library there that's part of the Stuart A. Rose Library, a special collection called the Raymond Danowski Poetry Library. And Raymond Danowski was a rather eccentric person with time and money on his hands. And he was also a completist. And so he set out the goal for himself to acquire everything related to American poetry that could be acquired, which is a crazy goal. But he actually did a pretty good job. He got a lot of stuff. So they have a fabulous library of not only first editions and rare volumes, but also correspondence and random stuff. I think they have the death mask of a particular poet. They have trunks and cargo and things that belong to various people, as well as, of course, manuscript pages and unusual articles and all kinds of stuff like that. So yeah, I got to work with that material while I was there for a year doing research and working on my manuscript from my dissertation, which is on the origins of poetry and prose and those categories, how we use them today. So I do get to still work on these. What I learned, I think what I took away from spending that year intensively myself working in the archives, I've been able to bring into the classroom in some really fun ways.
Space, the final frontier. The Minot Symphony Orchestra invites you to the 2022-2023 season. Join us September 24th as we start the season with All That Jazz, featuring vocalist Jasmine Spitzer, and a new work by Eric M. Anderson, featuring cellist Dr. Eric Anderson. The season ends on April 29th with The Planets by Gustav Holst. Season tickets are available for the 5 season performances. Come join us at Anne Nicole Nelson Hall for this season of the Minot Symphony Orchestra. More information is available at minotsymphony.org. That's minotsymphony.org.
One of the things that's so cool about the writing classes that we get to teach, the first year writing courses, is that these courses are some of the few places that students get to contribute their knowledge and perspective and actually curate the world around them while they're in their, it's one of the few courses they get to do that in when they're in their first and second years of a place like at Minot State. A lot of the other classes that they take are asking them to just take in information, and build that foundation of where they will, for where they will go next, for being able to do research and really move forward and contribute in their field. The writing classrooms, though, 110, English 110 and English 120, these classes get to encourage everybody to bring their own voice to bear right away into what we're doing. So that in a class like English 110, of course, we're working on crafting arguments. In a class like English 120, where it's more research based, I really like to bring in projects that are archive based. And the idea here, of course, is that we need to break down the expectation that you have to be advanced in your field to do primary level research. There are archives all over that need our interpretation and that need to be curated and need to be sorted through. So yeah, in my classrooms, I'm always looking for an archive that we can work with. And I've sometimes done this in ways that kind of hinge on my expertise in poetry. My classes have worked on local poets in the past, sometimes using local archives that not very many people get to go see or have bothered to see. Sometimes interviewing poets as well, interviewing living writers. When I got to lead a study abroad program in France while at Georgia Tech, I worked with a group of students to create a website compendium that took into account a lot of the lives and experiences of Black Americans who had traveled to France. And we made a searchable tool actually that other researchers can now use. So that's the kind of work that I think is really exciting to be able to do with first and second year students, showing them that even from the beginning, their voice really matters and their perspective matters. There's just so much out there that we need to understand and knowledge that we can deal with and it's really a very attainable goal to be the person who's producing that primary level research as soon as you enter your college career. So I think that's really fun.
I really appreciate your response in saying that students really do have something to contribute, especially at that first year level, in terms of making knowledge and finding a pathway through the scholarship based on their own interests. And absolutely in a venue in which students can compose almost entirely right off the bat as they're coming into the class, it really makes a difference. So could you tell us a little bit more about your new role here at MSU here in the English department as well? And you've talked a little bit about the classes, but what else are you doing in English?
Yeah, so I am joining a robust group of faculty, and I'm very excited to be here as a English associate professor for English teaching, writing, and literature courses. And so, primarily, of course, as you said, my specializations are American literature and poetry. And in most of my literature courses, that's what you will find me working on. To me, American literature is multi-ethnic literature, and so that's another thing that my classes really foreground. Categories of race and ethnicity, which I think are also especially important categories for what it means to be American and what this place is all about. So those are some of the things that I work on in my classes. I'm also really excited to be here in Minot, where there is such important history and presence of Native American cultures. And Minot State has some fabulous resources connected to the tribal nations that are near here and that are also connected to this location historically. And so I'm really excited to work with those also in my classes and the students who also are a part of those populations.
So for my last sorry, I'm going to cut that part out. I'm going to get a drink of water. That's the best part about not being on live stream. Of course, it'll be, I don't know. I mean, that's always the sort of thing that I look for when I watch these live streams. It's like, aha, they couldn't cut that out.
That's where the cut was.
So, Lizzy, overall, what would you say then is your teaching philosophy?
Well, that's a great question. I think that, let me talk big a little bit here and then I'll narrow in. I think that at the big level, I believe that learning is based on trust of oneself and also one's community. So I think that my greatest task as a teacher is to encourage students to take their own perspective quite seriously, and also to take quite seriously the task of presenting that and engaging with their community to more accurately and helpfully present that to the world around them. So that is a process of learning and listening and responding and taking in the information you need so that you can respond to the situation that's in front of you. At a really concrete level, my classes get to do this by working on those communication skills with students, equipping them with the tools they need to show the world what they see. And also, my classes also get to teach us how to read that world, literally to read it more fully and more accurately. Also with grace and with care for those who have come before us and for those who will come after us. Of course, is one of the beautiful things about literature and communication is that it lasts and that it outlives us. And so that's a great responsibility as well as a wonderful opportunity.
Well, Lizzy LeRud, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure to learn more about your work and your scholarship. Thank you again for helping us out today.
Thank you, Samuel. It was a pleasure chatting with you.
Well, we've reached that point in the program where we have to say goodbye. But again, we would like to thank you for watching the Lookout podcast. And as always, if you have something in your own scholarship you'd like to feature on the program, please get in touch with us. And again, this is Minot State University. We thank you again for watching. Be seen, be heard, be inspired, and thanks, and be in touch.